It was my 45th birthday, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting much. Over the years, Lauren and I had settled into a routine, and she wasn't the type to make a big deal out of birthdays. She'd always been practical, focused on the little things. So when she handed me a set of travel thermoses, cheap ones, mind you, and a generic greeting card with some flowery message inside, I couldn't say I was surprised. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate the gesture, but it felt, well, impersonal. Maybe it was the age thing, maybe the fact that I had expected something a little more meaningful. I don't know, but I tried not to let it bother me. After all, it wasn't about the gift. Birthdays had never been about the presents in our relationship, right? It was about the time we spent together, the acknowledgement of another year past. Still, I had this little nagging feeling in the back of my mind. The gift was just the start of a weird vibe that I couldn't shake all night. Later, after dinner, my nephew, Dylan, came over. He was a bright kid, just finishing high school, and he often liked to hang out with me when he wasn't busy with his friends. We got talking about family photos, and I started going through my phone's photo gallery to find some old sh*ts to show him. I'd forgotten that some of the photos I had taken were from the party Lauren had attended a few days ago. The one she had told me was just a consultation meeting in the city. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Lauren was always busy with work, and I was usually understanding about that. But now, seeing the picture Dylan showed me, I felt my stomach tighten. In the photo, Lauren was standing very close to Ryan Hendricks, a guy I had met once or twice at work events. They were at a party, it seemed, and Lauren was dressed in a short, tight-fitting dress. Definitely not something she would wear to a consultation meeting. Ryan had his arm around her waist. She was holding a glass of wine, but it wasn't just the wine that caught my eye. It was the way they were standing together, too close, too comfortable. The kind of comfort that didn't feel casual, that didn't feel right. I didn't need to zoom in to see the *Macy between them. Her body language wasn't the kind you'd expect between two colleagues, even if they were working together. Dylan, of course, didn't realize what he'd shown me. He was just scrolling through the photos, excited to find old ones of the family, but when he landed on that *T, everything changed. My mind started to race, and my heart began to pound, but I didn't show it. I just felt this cold rush of disbelief. I tried to brush it off, but it was like the photo was seared into my brain. That's when I decided I had to confront Lauren. I had to know what was going on. Was I overreacting? Or was something more serious happening behind my back? I showed her the picture. At first, she seemed unfazed, almost too unfazed. Her lips curled into that smile of hers, the one she used when she was trying to cover up something. "Oh, that," she said with a quick flick of her hand. "It's nothing really. It's just a work moment. Ryan had some back pain and I was helping him out. That's all." She seemed irritated, almost defensive. It was the way she said it, like she was upset with me for even questioning her. But that wasn't what bothered me. It was the way she was brushing it off like it was no big deal, as if I was the one making something out of nothing. She sat beside me, and her words continued to spill out. She spoke confidently, but her tone lacked the normal warmth. It was colder than usual, and the irritation in her voice made me uncomfortable. She looked at me like I was the one who didn't trust her. She couldn't even make eye contact with me for long. Her gaze kept darting to the side, as if she was waiting for me to say something. I said nothing. I let the silence stretch between us. My mind was buzzing with 1,000 questions, but I didn't know where to begin. I knew I should have said something, asked more questions, pushed further, but I didn't. Maybe it was the birthday night, the gifts, the fact that I didn't want to create drama, or maybe it was that part of me that still didn't want to believe it. I wanted to trust her. I had trusted her. But something about the way she was acting made me doubt everything. I kept quiet. I wanted to believe her, so I did. For now. But the image of them standing close, the way Ryan's arm was wrapped around her waist, the way she had leaned in just a little too much, it haunted me. She had never been one to casually get close to men like that, at least not in the way it looked in the photo. And what was that consultation meeting all about? I had no idea that Ryan would be there, and she had never mentioned him. It wasn't like her to leave out details, especially when it came to work. She spoke with an air of irritation that only seemed to get worse. I don't understand why you can't just trust me, she added, her voice tinged with annoyance. I've been telling you about work stuff for years, Mark. You know how it is. It's a professional environment. I was just helping him, that's all. Why do you always make everything into something it's not? Her words stung. They felt rehearsed, like she had said them before in some other conversation. Like she had prepared herself to handle any doubts I might have. I tried to shake the nagging feeling that had settled deep inside me. I wanted to believe her. But the more she spoke, the more it felt like she was getting defensive over something that wasn't as simple as she was making it out to be. She finally stopped speaking, and the silence in the room became unbearable. I didn't know what to say next. She had turned the situation around on me, making it seem like I was in the wrong for questioning her. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to take her word for it and drop it, but something deep down kept telling me there was more to the story. I had been married to Lauren for a long time, and I knew her habits, her mannerisms. She wasn't always this defensive. I pushed the thoughts aside, but they clung to me like a shadow. For the rest of the night, we sat there together, her beside me, but the distance between us felt as wide as a canyon. It wasn't just about the photo anymore. It was about all the little things that had started to change in our relationship over the past few months, her new interests in sports, her sudden obsession with fitness, the odd perfume scent that didn't belong to her usual fragrance. I had let those little things go, convinced that they were just quirks, things that were unimportant. But now, looking at her, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that had been growing inside me. It was clear that I hadn't been paying attention, not really. Lauren hadn't been physically leaving, but emotionally? She had been slipping away. And I hadn't noticed until it was too late. The photo wasn't just a photo anymore. It wasn't just about Ryan Hendricks and her help with his back pain. It was about everything else I hadn't seen until now. Maybe I should have asked more questions, but that was the problem. By the time I was ready to ask, I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answers. As I sat there, next to Lauren, trying to make sense of the conversation we just had, a heavy weight settled over me. It wasn't just about the photo. It was everything that had led up to it, everything that had slowly shifted in our lives over the last 6 months. I had been so focused on work, on maintaining the routine of our everyday lives, that I hadn't noticed how much Lauren was changing. Or maybe I had, but I had simply chosen not to see it. And now, in the aftermath of that photo, I realized that I was already too far behind, too blind to the reality of what was happening. For months, little things had started to shift, things I had shrugged off as inconsequential at the time. I hadn't given them a second thought, believing they were just part of life's ebb and flow, that they didn't really matter. But now, looking back, it felt like those small signs were the cracks in the foundation of our marriage, cracks that I had ignored, thinking everything was fine. And now here I was, staring down at this image, feeling as though I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control. First, there was her newfound obsession with sports. Lauren had never been athletic. In fact, she had always hated exercise, preferring to spend her time reading, cooking, or working on her art. She had never been the type to go for a run or join a fitness class, much less talk about hitting the gym. But over the last 6 months, she had started talking about working out, about getting into shape. It was subtle at first, little comments about feeling better after a workout, about how good she felt after a long walk or an evening jog. I didn't think much of it at first. People change, right? But then it became more frequent. She started mentioning specific workouts she was doing, how she had signed up for fitness classes at a new gym across town. It was strange. Why hadn't she ever shown any interest in exercise before? And why was she so focused on it now? I had assumed it was just a passing phase, a way to feel better about herself. Maybe she wanted to get healthier, or maybe she was just looking for a new hobby. I didn't press her about it. But now, looking back, I wondered if this was the beginning of something more, something I had missed. Then came the evenings. Lauren had always been the kind of person who was content to stay home after a long day, curling up on the couch with a book or watching TV. But over the past few months, she had started going out more. Not with me, but on her own. At first, it seemed harmless enough. She'd say she was going for a walk or meeting a friend for coffee. But it became more frequent. At least a couple of nights a week, she would disappear for a few hours, leaving me alone in the house. Sometimes she'd come home late, looking slightly disheveled, as if she had rushed out the door. There was always an excuse: I had a work call, or I got caught up with a friend. And each time I nodded, said nothing, and accepted it. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. But now, in the wake of that photo, I couldn't help but wonder if those nights were more than just casual outings. Maybe I had been blind to the fact that she was pulling away from me, not just physically, but emotionally. Was she trying to find something else, something that I couldn't give her? The perfume was another oddity I couldn't explain away. Lauren had always worn the same scent, a light floral fragrance that I could always pick out in a crowd. But for the past couple of months, there had been a change. I had started noticing a different scent on her, one that didn't belong to her usual perfume. At first, I thought maybe it was just something she had picked up by accident, a new bottle she had bought on a whim. But it wasn't just once. It happened multiple times, and each time I asked her about it, she would brush it off with some explanation. I walked by the perfume counter, or I must have used someone else's lotion. The excuses were always too convenient, too rehearsed. I began to feel uneasy. I knew the scent wasn't hers. It was something else, something I couldn't place. And it was always the same fragrance, something strong, musky, and unfamiliar. I didn't confront her about it, but it ate at me, gnawing away at my trust. I knew that scent wasn't hers. But what did it mean? Was I just being paranoid, or was I picking up on something I wasn't ready to face? And then there was her phone. Lauren had never been particularly secretive with her phone. She'd always left it lying around, never bothered with passwords or locking it. But lately, that had changed. She began taking her phone everywhere, even into the bathroom where she used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter. She started putting a password on it, something she had never done before. At first, I thought it was just for work, that she wanted to keep things secure, but I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to it. When I asked her about it, she said it was for work confidentiality and that she didn't want anyone to accidentally see something important. I didn't question it at the time. But now I couldn't help but feel like there was more behind it. Was she trying to hide something from me? It wasn't just the little things either. There was the way she laughed at things that I said. She would laugh and joke with me, but it didn't feel the same. It wasn't the kind of laughter we used to share, the kind that was full of inside jokes and genuine affection. No, this laughter was different. It felt forced, like she was just going through the motions, like she was pretending to care when she didn't. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but the signs were all there. She wasn't the same person she had been when we first got together. And I wasn't sure when that change had started or when I had missed it. As I sat there, thinking about all of this, it became clear to me this wasn't something that had just started. This wasn't a sudden shift, a random occurrence. No, this had been building for months, maybe even longer. It wasn't just that she was changing. It was that she had been emotionally distancing herself from me, and I hadn't noticed. Not until now. I felt a deep, sinking pit in my stomach. I had been blind to the slow unraveling of our relationship. I had let my work, my life, my own complacency blind me to the signs that were right in front of me. And now I was staring at this photo of her with Ryan, wondering how long this had been going on. How long had she been pulling away from me? How long had she been hiding things? It was clear that the picture was only the tip of the iceberg. I had a sinking feeling that there was so much more beneath the surface that I wasn't ready to see. But deep down, I knew it was time to confront it. Time to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I sat in silence, my mind racing, replaying everything in my head. How long had I ignored the signs? How long had I been living in a lie? I didn't know the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't ignore it anymore. The truth was there, staring me in the face, and I had to confront it. But how? How did I even begin to ask the questions that were circling in my mind? How did I even start to untangle the mess that our relationship had become? As I thought about it, I realized one thing: it was no longer about trust. It was about what I was willing to accept. And right now, I wasn't sure if I was willing to accept the truth of what Lauren had become. I needed to know. And I needed to know now. It was time to confront her. To ask the questions I had been avoiding for so long. But I wasn't sure if I was ready for the answers. I spent the next few days in a haze, walking around like I was stuck in some nightmare I couldn't escape from. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that image again. Lauren, pressed against Ryan Hendricks, his arm around her waist. The tightness in my chest wouldn't go away. The suspicion gnawed at me, but I wasn't ready to confront her just yet. Part of me was still trying to convince myself that I was overreacting, that I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just my imagination. This was something real, and it had been building for a while. I had to do something. I had to know the truth. It was becoming unbearable. But I couldn't just go up to Lauren and demand answers. I wasn't sure how I could handle the fallout if I did. I wasn't sure if I could even face the reality of what might be true. Instead, I decided to take a different approach. Gather information, be smart about it, and figure out what was really going on behind my back. If there was any chance of saving my marriage, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I started by digging into her phone records, the little things that could shed light on what was happening when I wasn't around. I was careful, though. I knew that once I crossed a certain line, there would be no going back. I had always respected her privacy, but now, well, things had changed. I needed answers, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get them. I began by tracking her calls and messages. It didn't take long for me to find a number I didn't recognize. I hadn't seen it before, but it was listed as a frequent contact. I wrote it down, my pulse quickening with each new piece of information. This was it. I knew I had to find out more. But that night, the breaking point came at the corporate gallery party. I had no idea Lauren was going to be there. The event had been organized for work purposes, and since I worked as a security contractor, it seemed like just another gig. I didn't expect to see her there, but when I arrived at the venue and walked into the main hall, I froze. There she was, standing in the corner with Ryan Hendricks. The sight of them together sent a chill down my spine. Their heads were tilted close to each other, the soft glow of the dim lights casting shadows on their faces. Lauren was laughing, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in a long time. It wasn't the laugh she used to share with me, the one full of warmth and affection. This one was different, detached, like she was enjoying something that I wasn't a part of. Then I heard her voice. It cut through the murmur of the crowd like a knife. She said, "He won't find out." The words stung. They hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind raced as I processed what I had just heard. Who was she talking about? Who was she referring to when she said he? Could only be me. She couldn't be talking about anyone else. My legs felt weak beneath me, and for a moment I thought I might fall. My heart was pounding in my chest. Lauren didn't notice me standing there. Her back was to the door, and she was so engrossed in whatever conversation she was having with Ryan that she didn't see me slip into the room. But then, just as I was about to turn away, she looked up. Her face turned pale, and the color drained from her cheeks. The shock was evident in her eyes, but she recovered quickly, masking her surprise with a forced smile. She stood there, her glass of wine still in hand, as if nothing had changed. Her gaze shifted nervously toward Ryan, and then back to me. "Mark," she said, her voice flat, like she had been caught off guard, but she was trying to play it cool. "What are you doing here?" The question felt ridiculous. I was at my own event at a work function. I had every right to be there. But she asked as though it was somehow my fault, as though I wasn't supposed to be in that room, as though I had intruded on something that didn't concern me. And in that moment, I realized just how much she had changed. I didn't answer her immediately. I simply stared at her, trying to keep my composure. I had 1,000 things to say, but I didn't trust myself to speak. My emotions were a mess, and I was terrified that if I said the wrong thing, it would all fall apart. I couldn't let her see how much it hurt. I couldn't let her know how much I already knew. I stepped aside without saying another word. I didn't want to make a scene, not here, not in front of her colleagues. But everything inside me was screaming to confront her, to shout, to demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to keep my cool. I needed to play it smart. A few minutes later, Lauren made her way toward the exit. I saw her glance at me one last time before she hurried out of the room, leaving me standing there, feeling more confused and betrayed than I ever had before. That night, she didn't come home. I didn't ask her where she had gone. She called around 2 a.m. saying she had stayed at a friend's house because she had drunk too much wine. I didn't ask who that friend was. I didn't ask if she was okay, because deep down, I already knew. And I didn't need her to tell me what I had already figured out. She thought I was stupid. She thought I wouldn't notice. She thought I wouldn't see it, but I had seen it. And now that I knew, I couldn't pretend that everything was fine anymore. The next morning, Lauren tried to act normal, like nothing had happened. But I couldn't look at her the same way. The words she had said, "He won't find out," echoed in my mind. I couldn't let them go. I needed the truth. I had to know everything. I didn't say a word to her. I didn't ask her where she had been, who she had been with. I didn't need to. I already had enough pieces of the puzzle. But I knew I needed more. I needed to see it all laid out in front of me. I needed to know the full extent of the betrayal. And that was when I decided to gather the evidence. I couldn't rely on just my suspicions anymore. I needed to dig deeper. I needed to know the full truth, even if it meant hurting myself in the process. I started with the tablet. I had access to it, and I knew there was more to uncover. Through the cloud, I found a hidden chat. It was a conversation between Lauren and Ryan, full of messages about plans, hotel rooms, and trips they had talked about. They were planning something big. A trip to Vancouver right after the divorce, according to their messages. Hotel bookings, hotel rooms. It was all there. Everything. The affair wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown relationship. And then there it was. A file labeled L plus or 20. I knew what that meant. It was a plan for their future, and it had been going on for a lot longer than I had realized. That was it. I couldn't deny it anymore. I had all the proof I needed. I felt numb as I stared at the screen, trying to absorb the weight of everything I had just uncovered. It was overwhelming. My hands were shaking as I quickly grabbed my phone and called a lawyer. I didn't want to waste any more time. I needed to protect myself. I needed to be prepared. Lauren wouldn't see it coming. Not yet. But I would be ready. I would be ready for whatever came next. Within a week, I had separated our accounts, transferred money into a secure account, and gathered all the documents I needed. Lauren had no idea. She still thought everything was fine, that I was none the wiser. I wasn't about to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to sit by while she ruined everything we had built together. The truth had slapped me in the face, and now I was going to make sure she faced the consequences of her actions. A week later, Lauren came home in a brand new coat with a shiny designer handbag hanging from her shoulder. It was the kind of item she would have never bought for herself unless she'd been making some significant changes. Maybe it was just a simple splurge or a present from someone else, but I couldn't ignore how much of it screamed new beginning. That's how I saw it, at least. She had been acting differently for months now, and something about the way she presented herself that night told me she had already begged *N to make plans. She was still the woman I had been married to for nearly 2 decades, but in this moment it felt like she was someone else entirely. Someone who had been slipping away from me, and now with this new handbag, this new coat, it seemed like she was stepping into a life without me. The realization hit me harder than I expected. She looked at me as she walked through the door, a small smile playing on her lips. "I've got to leave for a business trip in the morning," she said, brushing some imaginary dust off her shoulder. "Just wanted to tell you so you're not wondering where I am." A business trip. That's what she said. A part of me felt like laughing. I had seen all the signs, and I knew the business trip wasn't about work. She wasn't heading to a meeting or some conference. No, she was heading to the life she had planned with Ryan. The trip, the excitement, the secrecy, it was all falling into place just as I had suspected. She was leaving me behind, inch by inch, piece by piece. I didn't say anything in that moment. I had a plan, and I needed to see it through. As much as I wanted to scream at her, to confront her right there, I knew it wasn't the time. She had no idea what was coming. I had spent the last week quietly putting everything in motion, making sure that when she left for her business trip, there wouldn't be any place left for her to hide. The truth would be out, and she wouldn't be able to spin it into something I could just forgive and forget. I had already transferred the funds from our joint accounts, moved everything I could into a secure account, and made sure that my lawyer had everything necessary to ensure that Lauren wouldn't walk away from this with more than she deserved. I had learned about her affair with Ryan, the secret trips they planned, and the promises they made to each other, promises she had never made to me. But now I was making my own promises, and they were promises of accountability, not for me, but for her. Lauren had crossed the line. The moment she made plans with Ryan, the moment she started living a double life, she had chosen a path that would take her far away from me. But I had one final part of the plan to put into motion, making sure she faced the consequences of what she had done. That night, after she left for her business trip, I sat down at the kitchen table, breathing deeply as I tried to calm myself. I couldn't allow myself to get emotional. There would be time for that later, but right now it was about following through. My lawyer had everything in place. The paperwork was ready. The evidence I had uncovered over the last week was airtight, and she wouldn't be able to deny any of it. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat in the dark, going over every detail in my head. I wanted to make sure that when she came back, if she came back, she would understand just how serious I was. The way she acted, the way she dismissed my suspicions, the way she laughed off the things I noticed. I would make her see the truth, the same way I had seen it. She had left in a hurry that morning, barely even saying goodbye, but I wasn't interested in her hollow promises anymore. I was focused on what mattered, myself. I had already packed up the things she cared about, her clothes, her shoes, her makeup, everything that she had insisted on holding on to during the past few months. Everything she thought she could use to keep up the facade. It was all gone. I knew she wouldn't understand what I had done right away. But when the letters arrived, when the bank accounts were frozen, when the apartment she had been planning to rent in Ryan's name became a memory of what could have been, I hoped she would finally understand how far I had gone to ensure she faced the consequences. The moment Lauren found out, I could only imagine the look on her face. There would be no escaping it. She couldn't walk away from this one. Everything she had been hiding would be exposed. The business trips, the secret dates, the whispered conversations behind closed doors, it was all about to crash down on her. I had made sure she would lose access to everything, the accounts, the assets, the apartment she had been dreaming about. She wouldn't be able to walk away from this without realizing just how much she had jeopardized. And I wouldn't let her. It wasn't just about the money or the possessions. It was about the betrayal, the dishonesty. It was about how she had destroyed everything we had built, and now she would have to live with the aftermath of her actions. She could no longer hide behind the lies, the fake smiles, the business trips. Everything was laid bare. She wouldn't be able to turn back, and there was no going back for me either. The next day, after Lauren left for her trip, I called Ryan. He didn't answer, of course. Why would he? But I left him a message, a simple one. I told him I knew about the affair, about their plans, and that he needed to stay away from my life and from Lauren's, or there would be consequences. I wasn't sure what he would do, but I knew one thing. His life with Lauren was falling apart as quickly as mine had. I didn't let myself feel any anger anymore. It wasn't about anger. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about self-preservation, about making sure that I never allowed myself to fall into the trap of doubt and complacency again. This was about reclaiming my life. Lauren was due back in a few days, and I was ready for her. When she walked through that door, I would be waiting. She would see the truth, and she would know without a doubt that I had taken everything from her, and there was no going back. Everything she had planned, everything she thought she could build was falling apart. She had made her choice. As the days passed and Lauren remained away, I took the time to clear out the things that reminded me of her. Her clothes, her perfume, the framed pictures of us together. It felt like I was removing pieces of a life that had never been truly mine. As I sifted through everything, I felt an odd sense of clarity. I had no idea what Lauren was doing at that moment or where she was. All I knew was that she was no longer my concern. It was time for me to take back control of my life. Time to move forward, to reclaim the parts of myself that had been lost. Lauren's world was crumbling, and it was my time to rebuild. Everything she had built, everything she had hoped for, was now slipping through her fingers. It wasn't my anger that fueled me anymore. It was something far stronger, the realization that I deserved better. I didn't need her. I didn't need any of it. The days moved quickly, and I continued to stay focused. I didn't know what Lauren would do when she returned, but it didn't matter. Whatever came next, I would face it. Because I had already made the choice to leave her behind, emotionally, financially, and mentally. The countdown had big asterisk N, and I would be ready for whatever came next. A week had passed since I set my plan into motion. The moment Lauren walked back through the front door, I was ready. I had prepared myself for whatever storm she might bring. What I hadn't anticipated was the sheer shock that would cloud her face as she entered the house. For a moment, she stood there in the doorway like she was waiting for some kind of sign, as if unsure whether the world she had left behind was still the same. It wasn't. She was no longer the woman I had once trusted. That woman had vanished with every secret she kept, with every lie she had told. The woman who stood before me now was someone who had already made her choice, someone who had already decided that what she had with me wasn't worth preserving. And now, as she walked into this new reality, I saw the cold realization on her face. This was no longer the life she had known. The first thing she did was glance around the room, her gaze landing on the envelope I had placed carefully on the kitchen table. It was the divorce papers, along with a letter detailing the asset division and her access to nothing. Her eyes moved from the envelope to me, a mixture of confusion and disbelief crossing her features. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could get the words out, I spoke first. "I think you know why I'm here," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. "You've made your choices, Lauren. And now so have I." She looked at me, and I could see the panic rising in her chest. I could see her hands tremble slightly, her lips press into a tight line, as though she were trying to suppress the inevitable breakdown. But this time I wasn't going to give her the chance to manipulate me, to make me feel sorry for her. She had done this to herself. She began, but I held up a hand to stop her. "No," I said, my tone firm. "No more excuses. No more lies. I've seen everything, Lauren. I know about the affair with Ryan. I know about the hotel bookings, the trips you planned, the apartment you were going to rent. You thought you could just walk away from this life without any consequences, but that's not how this works." Her face drained of color, and I saw her glance at the envelope again, the reality of what was happening starting to sink in. Her eyes shifted nervously and she swallowed hard before speaking again. You don't understand. I was just confused, she stammered, her voice shaking. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was trying to find myself. I didn't know what I wanted. And then Ryan knew. Enough, I cut her off, my voice colder than I intended. You don't get to explain this away. Not this time. You were the one who chose to betray me. You were the one who made the decision to start a life with someone else. You were the one who tore our marriage apart. You made your bed, Lauren, and now you have to lie in it. Her face crumpled at my words and the tears came quickly. She took a step forward, her hands shaking as she reached out to me. Mark, please. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what happened, but I can't lose you. I love you. I still do. I stood there unmoving. Her words were like poison, each one dripping with the same manipulation I had let myself fall for all these years. I had allowed myself to believe in her apologies, her promises. I had allowed myself to believe that she could change. But now, with everything laid bare before me, I knew better. You don't love me, I said, my voice steady, unwavering. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have lied, you wouldn't have cheated. You wouldn't have built a life behind my back. You made your choice, and I'm making mine. Lauren's breath hitched as she stepped back, her hands falling to her sides. You're going to divorce me? She whispered, disbelief in her voice. I already have, I replied coldly, motioning to the papers on the table. You don't get to decide how this ends, Lauren. You lost the privilege the moment you decided to betray me. You're going to lose everything, the house, the accounts, the life we built. It's all mine now. You don't have a place in it anymore. For a moment, she seemed frozen, her eyes darting from the envelope to me, her face filled with shock and regret. But then, as if something snapped inside her, she took a deep breath as if trying to regain control of herself. This is it then? She asked, her voice trembling. You're just going to throw everything away? You're going to destroy everything we've built because of one mistake. One mistake. I repeated, my voice thick with disbelief. This wasn't just one mistake, Lauren. This was a choice. This was a series of choices you made over months, behind my back. Every time you lied to me, every time you went out with Ryan or took that phone call in another room, you were making a choice. A choice that told me everything I needed to know. And now you can't take it back. Tears streamed down her face, but there was no sympathy left in me. I had mourned the loss of our marriage long before I had ever confronted her. I had let go in pieces with every lie, with every small betrayal, until the woman standing in front of me wasn't someone I recognized anymore. You don't get to apologize anymore, I said, my voice hardening. You've had your chances. You've had your time to make things right, but you chose to destroy this. You chose Ryan over me, over this family. So now you'll have to live with the consequences of your actions. Her shoulders sagged, her tears flowing freely now, but I didn't feel a flicker of remorse. If anything, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I had given her every opportunity to be honest with me, to come clean about everything. But instead, she had chosen to live in a lie. And now that lie had crumbled. You'll get your things, I continued. You'll have the things you're entitled to, but it won't be what you thought it would be. Your life with Ryan? It's over before it even began. I've already taken steps to ensure that he's not part of this. You don't get to run off with him and leave me with nothing. He's not going to win. You're going to face the reality of your actions. She nodded slowly, the reality settling on her shoulders like a weight she wasn't ready for. You're right, she whispered. I don't deserve any of this. I never should have done it. I never should have lied to you. But it was too late. Her apologies no longer meant anything to me. The truth was clear, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite it. I wasn't going to let her change the narrative. She had betrayed me, and I wasn't going to let her walk away from it unscathed. You're going to have to leave, I said, my voice final. I've already made arrangements. You're no longer welcome here. You'll take your things and you'll go. Her face twisted with disbelief and sorrow, but there was nothing left in me to offer. She had chosen this, and now it was time for her to live with the fallout. She stumbled back, wiping her tears before finally turning toward the door. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the empty house. When she left, I knew there would be no coming back. This was the end. And though the pain of betrayal still stung, a part of me felt relief. She had lost me long before she ever realized it. The days after Lauren left for her business trip felt like a blur. It was strange how quickly everything shifted. When she wasn't around, the house felt emptier, quieter, and yet it also felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It was as if, by taking that first step confronting her, making the divorce real, I had released myself from the grip of the lies, the hurt, the constant wondering. I didn't feel angry anymore. Instead, I felt a sense of finality, like the chapter had closed and there was no going back. Lauren didn't reach out. For the first few days, I half expected a call, a text, maybe even a desperate plea to talk. But nothing came. The silence was deafening, and honestly, it left me with a strange sense of peace. If she truly wanted to make things right, she would have come to me sooner. But her absence told me everything I needed to know. The person I had been married to was gone, and all that remained was a stranger who had betrayed me. As the days passed, I kept myself busy. I threw myself into work, into fixing the house, into making sure that nothing about this life I had built would be taken from me. I even began to remove some of the old remnants of our life together, photos, trinkets, things that I had once held onto so tightly. I didn't want reminders of who we had been. I wanted to forge my own future, free of the weight of what Lauren had turned into. It was a process and it wasn't easy, but I felt stronger with each step I took. In a way, I was reclaiming myself. The person I had become in our marriage, the version of me that had been lost in her lies and her manipulation, I was getting that person back. A month had passed since the confrontation and Lauren was still absent. She had left without saying much more than a few tearful apologies, but the consequences of her actions were just beginning to unfold. I knew the truth had to come out, it couldn't stay buried forever. There were financial implications, legal consequences, and the reputation of our marriage was at stake. I had already taken steps to make sure Lauren didn't walk away from this with more than she deserved. She had chosen her path, and now it was time to make sure she faced the consequences. First, the financial side. I had contacted my lawyer the moment everything came to light. I needed to make sure the division of assets was clear, that she wouldn't be able to hide anything or take more than her fair share. With the evidence I had gathered, including the messages, photos, and everything I had learned about her affair with Ryan, there was no room for negotiation. She had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. I had been careful with everything. Every financial transaction, every hidden account, every moment I spent making sure that my assets were protected. It wasn't about the money, though. It was about showing her that there were consequences for what she had done, for breaking our vows, for betraying the trust one had given her for so many years. It wasn't just about the financial settlement, though. There was the issue of Ryan. I knew he had a wife, and I couldn't let him get away with his part in this. I wasn't a vindictive person, but I believed in fairness. So I did what I had to do. I reached out to his wife. I told her everything. She deserved to know. She deserved the truth. She had the right to